Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance set the internet ablaze with folks on both sides of either loving it or hating it. And they say that creatively and artistically, you're not living up to your potential if you are not dividing the room, because you're either being too commercial or one-sided or just putting out trash. But when you're able to express yourself artistically and give folks something to talk about, as Kendrick clearly did, then you're doing something right. So from that perspective, let's give Kendrick Lamar definitely a round of applause there. First off, I want to shout out the interview, the pre-Super Bowl performance interview that Kendrick did with Ebro, which was cool to see because Kendrick just, normally doesn't do interviews. They're few and far between. But it also helped set the stage and expectations for folks anticipating what his performance is going to be like. Kendrick coming off of musically his biggest year ever. He had a lot more eyes on him than usual. And during that interview, he spoke a lot about storytelling and how he crafts his music, similar to how a writer would put together the theme and the story of a novel. He layers his music in a similar way. And he said that for the Super Bowl halftime show, it was going to be no different. He wanted to tell a story, and he definitely delivered on that. I appreciate from an artistic perspective how he stayed true to himself. He's the quintessential artist's artist. He felt he had something to say, and he had an opportunity to do it on one of the biggest stages ever, which is the Super Bowl halftime show. And he didn't want to take that moment and be something that he's not and create, this grandiose production that maybe some folks were expecting, just based on the history of what we've seen with Super Bowl halftime shows. But instead, he wanted to tell a story of America from his perspective, a story of oppression, a story of redemption, and sprinkled throughout a nonstop, relentless FU to Drake. And he stuck to his guns, and it did so. Speaking of storytelling and symbolism, starting off with Samuel L. Jackson playing the role of Uncle Sam, America's Uncle Sam, and representing throughout his performance how America attempts to dictate how black and brown people should act and behave. He brought with him on stage all black performers throughout the beautifully choreographed show, and everyone was dressed in either red, white, or blue, symbolizing a few different things. Because again, Kendrick's artistic expression is, chock full of Easter eggs and very thoughtful and deliberate. A lot of double entendres, triples. But where the red, white, and blue symbolizes, you can see it from the viewpoint of the gangs in LA, where he's from, red and blue, Bloods and Crips, and the white representing the neutrals. Also representing, if you want to look at it through a political lens, which ties into the, Samuel L. Jackson, Uncle Sam vantage point of red and blue Republicans and Democrats. And to a much lesser extent, the white could represent the more, fringe other parties sprinkled throughout the American political system. And then the obvious red, white, and blue representation of the American flag. And being depicted as, or by rather, all the black performers is symbolic of the American flag and America itself being built off the backs of black slaves. And Kendrick would stand in the center of when they did that American flag formation, in the center of it, showing a clear divide through the middle, through the center of the flag, which again represents the political or gang-related or societal divisions that we've become accustomed to. And Kendrick being in the middle is symbolic of him being the unifier, or attempting to try to unify, to mend, which gave me kind of Bob Marley vibes, when Bob Marley famously had, after being shot, he had that concert in Jamaica where there was like a lot of political violence happening between two rival parties, and he brought the heads of both of those parties on stage and like joined their hands together. It reminded me of that type of moment. Now, the whole thing also had a video game aesthetic to it. Had like a video game motif. The stage itself was designed in the shape of a video game controller, which begs the question, what game is being played? Does it tie into the fact that we're all watching a football game? Is he speaking to the rap game and he's the one controlling it? Is it the American game? A game of the American system playing the minorities within the system? Or vice versa? Are the minorities standing up to and bucking the system? Are they able to? And the obvious, again, sprinkled throughout, just looking at through the lens of the rap game itself, him playing and controlling and beating out Drake within their recent rap beef. Now, Kendrick Lamar's work is always known, how I mentioned before, as having a bunch of layers to it. Very deliberate, thought out layers that his fans love to dissect and go through and maybe even draw conclusions that aren't really there, but they make them there. You know, as they say with stories, for example, one or any type of art, but just speaking from the perspective of a writing perspective, when you put something out there into the world, it's no longer yours. There's a collaboration going on between the writer who created something and the person who is taking it in and making their own connections based on their biases and life experiences and how they're interfacing with that piece of art that was put out there. So in that sense, a lot of his fans, you know, make connections to things that, you know, maybe weren't even his intent, but are there consciously or subconsciously. And all that type of stuff is like super fun for me to get into a little bit. And shows, for example, like the podcast, like the Dissect podcast is great for this type of thing. Rap Genius, where it breaks down lyrics specific to the Super Bowl performance itself. Jessica Clemens of New Rockstars has a great breakdown. Knox Hill and many others also have really cool breakdowns where I drew upon for a few of these things that resonated with me. So first and foremost, he was wearing this leather jacket that said Gloria on it. And Gloria is what he calls his pen. So it's like a shout out to his weapon of choice, which is reinforcing his writing as a weapon. He had this lowercase a chain on, which I didn't make in real time, like the connection to during the performance, which in hindsight is like, how could I not? But that chain has a double meaning, which folks argue that it doesn't, but how could it not? First and foremost, it is part of a logo for PG Lang. PG Lang is an acronym for Program Language, which is an American independent, multidisciplinary creative communications company headquartered in Los Angeles, founded by Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free. That's their company. The lowercase a is part of the logo of PG Lang. Granted, it is also the musical notation of an A minor, which is arguably one of the most popular lines of the most popular song of the year, Not Like Us. And I'm sure it was not lost on Kendrick Lamar that this chain, which he has never worn before in public at least, would come across in both ways. Another cool thing that happens during his performance is that Serena Williams comes out and starts crip walking. And she is also part of his song Not Like Us, the now infamous Drake diss, because Drake and Serena dated a few years back and had a bit of a falling out. He's said negative things about her and or her current husband. And in Kendrick's song Not Like Us, he says something to the effect of, you better not talk on Serena. Serena, who is also famously from LA, from Compton, as Kendrick Lamar is. And then so he has all these like foreshadowing of, you know, throughout his performance of playing Not Like Us. And then the biggest tease before actually getting to it is when he says that he wants to play their favorite song, meaning, you know, the crowd's favorite song, but they have to be careful because, you know, they like to sue, meaning Drake and the lawsuit that he has currently going on. And he transitions into the Luther song from the GNX album, which he has with SZA, which is like a cool change of pace and a dope performance by her. And there was a lot of conversation leading up to the Super Bowl performance of, is he going to play this song? Is he not going to play it? Should he play it? Should he not? You know, how are you going to play a song during a Super Bowl that's essentially a diss song calling someone a pedophile? And also, you know, you shouldn't give that person so much light, so much bandwidth, so on and so forth. And regardless of where you fit in that conversation, I love how unapologetically he segues into it, speaking to how you can't fake influence, which to me is also a subliminal dig at Drake, and highlighting the difference between being popular and being actually influential. And then just drops into the song with the entire crowd singing along, especially when he goes quiet and allows the crowd to fill in and it's probably A minor, which was great. And another really dope moment within that is when Mustard comes out, his producer, during the Mustard, and you just see like them two, and it's a cool, like, you know, like two boys together that have the, you know, biggest hit song of the year in the biggest show of the year in the middle of the Super Bowl, just them two, and like him giving Mustard his shine on such a big stage. It was really, really cool to see. And two more little Easter eggs to get into is that, according to Jessica Clemens of the New Rockstars, the way that the buttons light up in the controller, like before the performance actually begins, if you see like the controller buttons start lighting up and like blinking in and out, that is actually a cheat code to a video game of Jurassic Park Lost Worlds, to be able to start off the game with 59 lives. And the tie-in here is that this is the 59th Super Bowl. Coincidence? Probably not. And if true, that's just bonkers how much thought and layers Kendrick puts into his work. Then the last, more of the conspiracy theory side of things that I'll point to in terms of Easter eggs within this performance, which is the cool thing about Kendrick Lamar stuff, right? Because even, you know, weeks and months and years from now, people are still going to be breaking down this performance along with his other music, as they still do from, like, you know, previous albums and music videos, and like finding cool new nuanced things, which is just a testament to his artistry. But according to the Jumpers podcast, they speak about the placement of the X of the controller on the actual football field itself. Because taking a step back, there's an artist by the name of XXX Tentacion who was killed, and he had a back and forth, like, smaller beef with Drake back in the day, something to do, I believe, with like a sampling or like a style that Triple X was saying, you know, like Drake bit off him or didn't give him credit for, or something along those lines. And Tacion tweeted once, "If I die, it was Champagne Papi who did it," which is Drake's like name on like IG or Twitter or whatever. And then he winds up dying for real. But, you know, I never really followed his music much, but I know he had a very cult-like following, and his fans like took that and ran with it, and there was all this speculation, did Drake really have him killed or not, so on and so forth, which I'm not saying any of that is true or not true. I have absolutely no idea. If I was speculating, I would think not, being that, you know, it was such like a public thing or such a hyped theory that, you know, authorities would have looked into it, and, you know, if there was some validity behind it, Drake probably would have been arrested or something like that. But regardless of the validity of it, the fact that, if true, what the Jumpers podcast guys point out, just adds to the whole diabolical nature of Kendrick Lamar with the Drake beef. So they said the X represents, you know, 10, the number 10 in Roman numerals, and the X of the controller stage was on the 30-yard line. So if 10 is for X, an X on the 30-yard line would be XXX. Hi, obviously, Triple X Tentacion. And the dancers, if you notice, throughout the entire performance had this two-tone hairstyle, which is how Triple X Tentacion always rocked his hair. Like one color to the left, one color to the right. And Kendrick just playing with that idea, if that, again, intentional, which again ties back to one of my first points, which is, sometimes fans reach and make connections that weren't intended to be there, but are there. But if they were intentional, then how sick and thoughtful is that? And then Kendrick just wraps it up with the lights in the crowd in the stands saying game over, signifying again with multiple different meanings depending on which way you want to look at that. The game over between the rap battle between him and Drake, like I clearly won, game's over. Or the game is over between the system and oppressing the minorities, that game is over, we're rising up, fucking the system. But that was definitely a dope performance in my opinion. So shout out once again to Kendrick Lamar for a great Super Bowl, true to his artistic self performance. And just a quick aside on a few commercials that I enjoyed throughout the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is known for these very expensive commercial spots that a lot of companies debut commercials for. The first one, which I really enjoyed, was the cancer, we're gonna knock you out commercial. I had my mom had breast cancer. My wife had a very aggressive breast cancer, which I did a podcast with her on last year. So I enjoyed seeing that type of commercial and that type of dedication and drive and just like empowering statement. I think that's definitely important to see and to strive for. It was a cool alien Doritos commercial with like this UFO that was trying to beam up the bag of Doritos from a guy in his room, and he's like fighting with the beam to keep the Doritos bag. There was a funny commercial with George Costanza from Seinfeld where he's playing like all the characters in a restaurant, and it's a mayonnaise commercial. And two more that I jotted down that I really liked was there was a commercial for Instacart, the delivery service, where it had like all the mascots from like all the different grocery items like Kool-Aid and the Green Giant and just a bunch of different like mascots of all these products. And you're like, what the hell is this commercial for? And they're all like rushing to somewhere, and it's like all of them coming together to being delivered by Instacart. That was a dope commercial. And then last but certainly not least, commercial about wings with Matthew McConaughey in it. And you're thinking it's like a chicken wings commercial the entire time, but it's actually an Uber Eats commercial. And why I liked it most is that it has a cameo in it by my guy Sean Evans from Hot Ones, which is a great YouTube interview show. He's an amazing interviewer, Sean Evans. So if you guys don't watch Hot Ones, you should. And I would recommend watching like some celebrity or musician or comedian or someone that you like, and then watching their Hot Ones interview with Sean Evans so you can get an idea of what a great interviewer he is. And that, folks, was my little recap and review of the Super Bowl. Shout out to the Eagles who won the Super Bowl. Fly, Eagles, fly, until my Jets come back and win it all next year. Probably not. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of Kendrick's performance. What commercials did you guys like? And let's keep that convo going.